Hi, Paul Arnold here, sometimes known as Stuttering Professor, and today I want to talk to you about how to be a great account handler. Now, I spent 20 years working as account handler in some of the top advertising agencies, and whilst this is specifically about that, actually the skills of that actually apply to many other roles where you are managing a relationship with a client. And I think actually, what you've got to remember is that, whilst there are lots of sort of, small little things about, how you write contact reports, laying out the meeting, doing your brand book and all things like that, those are not the fundamental skills that really makes the difference between being a good account handler and a great account handler. And I think actually what makes a really great account are four things. It's about one, making things happen. That's why you're there. Two is about relationships. Three, from a relationship, is about trust. And four, based on those two things, is about your ability to influence. So let's go through each of those four in terms. The first one's about making things happen. Look, that's why we are employed. We have clients who need to get things done and they need us to go and do it. And in many ways, when you're a account handler, you're the conductor. You are dealing with actually many different other people who often got greater skills than you in a specific field. So one of the things you need to do is you need to know enough about each of those individual areas so you can have constructive, useful conversation with them, to brief them properly, to understand what they're saying. But also you need to have that information so when you go back to the client, you understand a lot about it. And therefore that idea about single point of contact, that therefore you are the one they talk to rather than, oh, well, you don't know enough about it, I need to go elsewhere. And really building on that, what I would say is, we have got to learn to let go. One of the problems with account handlers is they get filled up with they're the greatest thing going, and actually they've got to realize they are not as skilled and as professional as other people. So our job is to brief, let other people do their magic, and then we come back and then we often help represent what they've gone and done. And I think therefore, there's something about having energy and passion is really important, because you need that to push into a system, to make things happen, to encourage people to want to work on your project rather than working on another project. And I want to be quite controversial here about this. Often in an agency, you're seen to be the person who's helped to sell the work through to the client. And I would like to suggest is the other way around. I think fundamentally our role is to represent the client's needs and wishes through our organization. I'll share a story with you. I was doing some work with Reckitt's and I was going up to see my client, and I was literally waiting by the front door with the taxi outside, waiting for the creative work, grabbed the work, jumped in the taxi, went up to Hull, and I'm looking at the work on the train thinking, I don't like this stuff, it's not very good. But my job was like, go up, sell the work. So I'm up on the train, I'm working out how to sell it, and I'm going to see this client I've known for about 5 years, great client called David. And we're sitting there and talking, and then afterwards he stops saying, Paul, I don't think you believe this stuff, all non-verbal communication coming out. And I said, well, and eventually, I did come clean. They said, look, do me a favor, go back to London, go and tell them exactly, I trust you, Paul, you know what's right, what's wrong about it, you go back, you can say I said it, but go back. But do me a favor, never ever come back up here with work that you don't personally believe in. And I remember having 3.5 hours of excruciating pain thinking, that's right. And my career took off after that because my job was to get the best done. I started having more battles inside the agency than outside, but I was trying to do what's right. I'll share another example. I was speaking to a person I know who worked on the Kellogg's account. Grew up as a little account exec, grew up to be quite senior, and he had a client who was the same way. At ABM, grew up to be, the marketing director. And they're having a conversation once about the great work they'd done on Kellogg's and, where did it go right and where did it go wrong. And basically the agency man said, look, it went right when we walked together. Not when we're apart, when we walk together. And that's what you've got to be with your client. You're together in arms, moving forward to do what is the right thing. And I think actually, one of the key things I'd say, of all the skills that you need to become even better at, it's strategy. Because at the end of the day, you must understand the client's business really, really well. Because you are helping to orchestrate the success of their business. So if you can't talk strategy, if you can't talk marketing, then honestly, they want to talk to someone else inside the organization. So really get honed on that. And I got a video about that as well. Going back inside the agency, why don't people do what you want to do? You go in and say, well, why didn't you do that? There are 4 reasons. One is because they didn't know what was being asked of them. The second is they didn't have the resources or the skills to go do it. The third reason, they didn't really want to go and do it. And the fourth reason was because they couldn't do it. They didn't have the ability to do it. Well, all those four are to do with you. You didn't brief it properly. You didn't give them the resources or the skill base they needed to have. You didn't explain the reason why. And the last one, you briefed the wrong person. So actually, as account handlers, you've really got to be very good at managing people and getting tasks done. So after making things happen, how do you make things happen? You make things happen by about relationships. The biggest difference I've noticed between the really great, amazing account handlers I've seen is their ability to form really powerful relationships with their clients. And it's all about building that rapport. It's about the fact that clients trust you. They really believe in you. And there's this openness of conversation. And a lot of this is to do with EQ. You know, I'm not going to go into EQ. There's another video I've done about that. But it's this ability to actually understand another person, work with them, build that level of trust and respect. A nice little piece of research done in the States when they're looking at litigation rates amongst surgeons. And they found that actually surgeons and clients who actually had a good relationship, in other words, they had a good EQ, the surgeon, when they made mistakes, they were less likely to be litigated against than the people who are very stern and, you know, very functional in the way they did it like that. And to be honest with you, I've made some real blinding mistakes in my career. But you know what? Clients by and large have forgiven me and let me off the hook because they knew I was actually batting on their side and I was trying to do the best I could. And hey presto, you know, I admitted to my faults, you know, which is another critical thing you've got to do. So that's relationship. And why do we want to build that relationship? Because it's about trust. Ultimately, they've got to trust you. Particularly in the field of communication, where you need massive high levels of trust because you're taking them into areas that they don't feel comfortable with. We're doing completely novel stuff. We're doing stuff that gets amplified onto TV, onto billboards, you know, into social media. So actually, they've got to trust that when you're taking them to this space, that you really do believe it and you're not going to just keep chucking them off the cliff. You know, and so often, you know, what we've got to do is actually we've got to make sure we build that trust. We build that trust through lots of little sort of micro proof points. You know, we always talk about the classic thing about you promise on Thursday and you deliver on Wednesday, you know, and actually I actually think that, you know, the more we can demonstrate that we go out of our way for our client, the better it is, because then they see we really are batting for them, we really are on their side, and we are really trying to help them a lot, you know. And then, you know, building on that stuff is that, you know, don't lie to a client. A client knows when you're lying. You know, like I said, an example with sort of my client sort of records, you know, you've got to tell the truth and you've got to come out as early as you can when things are not going quite right. You're better to do that because they just need to manage it inside their organization. You know, and the other thing about is physical presence builds trust. So any excuse, get down to the client. You can't build any relationship over a Zoom meeting or over the phone. You've got to get down there and physically be present. When I used to work on HP, I used to go over to Stuttgart, and I'm quite tall and I'll be wandering around and I'll be talking to that person. That's all really powerful stuff. That's what knits it together. And you hear about this, you bounce off that one, and that's what we've got to know. And this point about trust is that the deeper the quality of trust, the more open people are. And fundamentally, we need to have really honest, open conversation with our clients on both sides. That is the way that actually you build great work. And the last one of that is from that trust, you have an influence. Because we do need to influence. We often do need to help encourage clients to go a bit further than what they would naturally want to go and do. And, you know, we obviously talk about the Aristotle's three things about sort of pathos, logos, and ethos. You know, pathos being, you know, the emotion you put into your communications. You've got logos, which is the rational persuasion you put in. You've got ethos, which is you yourself, but there's also telos, and telos is this idea about what's the reason why, what's the purpose, and I think you need to have all four. Look, I'm not going to go a lot of depth about influence because I've done a whole video about that. But I think it's really important that we actually listen to what our clients are saying. You know, they are experienced, you know, they do understand their product better than you do. And actually there's also an acknowledgement and respect for them. If you don't respect them, I hate it when people in the agency would sort of badmouth their clients. So you can't do that. You've got to really respect them. And I think working together is really important on all this stuff. So I hope that's of use. I run loads of workshops. I do them online as well. So if any of these are of any use, please go and look up at my website at the end, and good luck with being a great account handler. Ciao. Bye.